I'm a bit of a hoarder when it comes to bike product. Like, I hang on to old stuff, just in case. Maybe I'll hang on to that 7-speed cassette that is just in case that drivetrain makes a comeback. That kind of thinking really is ridiculous, right?
Yes.
But harmless for the most part. The one area where I need to rid this habit, though, is with helmets. There is no good reason to hold on to an old helmet.
Oh, and you know what feels super good, Hottie, is just throwing away a bunch of stuff that you are never going to use again. It is such a pleasure to open up that space in the garage. In addition, a recent newsletter from our friends at Shimano, they talked about when you need to replace a helmet. Shimano has a partnership with Laser Helmets, and so that is why this info was in this newsletter. The obvious time to replace a helmet is after a crash. The helmet's done its job, get rid of it.
Yep, one and done on those crashes. But Laser says due to their exposure to UV light, helmets eventually need to be replaced out. Some of the signs are the outer shell is cracked or separating from the helmet foam. The helmet foam is dented or deformed. Helmet straps are fraying. The buckle or fit system becomes cracked. The fit system is no longer fixed to the helmet shell. On a MIPS-equipped helmet, any of the tabs holding that MIPS system in place are no longer fixed to the helmet or shell. That's a sign to get rid of the helmet. All these signs, in fact, mean it's time to replace that helmet. I always heard that a helmet has a life of about 2 years, and that's right in the middle area of what Laser's recommendations are, replacing your head protection. They say about every year to 3 years, depending on your frequency of use.
I was kind of surprised in that list it doesn't say when your helmet starts to stink. It's you can wash them. I mean, that's actually something I do. And really, you can have a nasty smelling helmet, wash it, seems good again. But eventually that stink soaks in. I think that is a good time to replace the helmet. And if you're going to replace it with a Laser. Oh man, I am loving my Laser helmets. You can check out Laser helmets for yourself, including its latest models with the Kineticor rotational impact system at lasersport.us. That's laser, Lazer, sport.us.
3, 2, 1.
Leadville, the podcast for the 100-mile mountain bike race presented by Shimano. You can find them at bike.shimano.com. We're up to, episode 12 from season 5. It's season 5, for God's sakes. I don't know that. We're up to episode 12. This is the show, of course, that breaks down, builds up, gets you ready, freaks you out for the highest, hardest one-day mountain bike race in the country. I am Michael Houghton, Hottie to most.
And I am Fatty. This is a special edition of the show, a bonus interview episode, if you will. We wanted to focus on a topic that affects everyone eventually, and that is coming back from an injury. Hottie and I have both dealt with this, and this season, in fact, I've been tripped up a couple of times by injury and physical issues.
Of course, we wouldn't want to go at this topic alone, which is why friend of the pod, Yuri Hauswald, will join us with his learnings of suffering a major setback and how to bounce back. Far be it, though, from us to tell us what you do or what you put between your sit bones and your saddle. Boy, that was a rough one to get through, huh? What I'm trying to say is, I'm not going to tell you what to sit on because that's a personal thing. We imagine, though, it would be something made of Lycra with something cushy stitch that is to the inside. But yeah, this is a private and personal area that I'm having trouble even talking about, but only you should know what is truly down there.
This is the most awkward ad read ever. I love it. Instead of telling you, we're just going to make some gentle suggestions. And we're going to start by saying, go to dnacycling.com and then consider how long you are sitting on a saddle. How long do you have your sit bones pressed into a saddle while riding from Leadville to Columbine and back again? The math plus the pressure should point you to a very specific pair of bibs in the DNA collection.
The name you may not like, but the chamois could very well be the one that saves your you-know-what. DNA has a model called the gravel bib short. We know gravel is not what we are doing. So let's pretend they call it the Endurance Mountain Bike Bib Shorts. In said bib is a chamois DNA calls its 5+ hour chamois. It is their highest rated when it comes to time in the saddle, and it is in the gravel bib short.
There are a lot of really good things we could say about these bibs besides just the chamois. They're the 2 mesh pockets on the leg panels and the 2 on the back panel, but that is just the bonus stuff you get when you squeeze on a pair. We were going to say jump into a pair, but frankly, we all squeeze into our bib shorts. So Hadi and I both done long events in the DNA gravel bibs. I mean, the DNA mountain bike bibs, and the chamois never failed us. So if you're wondering how you can get a little relief from that backside pounding, get over to dnacycling.com and check out the gravel bib shorts.
So this is our special edition of the Leadville 100 Mountain Bike Podcast, our first of the season, but probably not our last. If you're wondering why the course is not in this episode, we will get back to it in our next regular episode, which tend to come out on Tuesdays.
That's right. And I am pretty sure we left you gasping for breath at the top of Columbine. So we will get you back down to Twin Lakes soon enough. But speaking of Columbine, our guest is someone who spends time at the base of the Columbine climb, handing out goo gels and goo brew and encouragement and slaps on the ass to any racer who is about to make their climb. He's a good friend, someone who has a lot of great advice, a lot of great experience. And we are talking about, of course, no one but Yuri Hauswald. He suffered a pretty serious injury early this year, and it left him unable to ride for a while. And it's tough when that happens to keep a positive outlook. We talk about that. And this is a story about injury and recovery, and it is important, and one that probably some of you are going through right now. So we decided to have Yuri come on, share his wisdom.
Yuri is still recovering, but he is well on his way, and we expect to see him in Leadville at the base of Columbine for some sage advice on how to bounce back from a devastating blow. We welcome our friend Yuri Hauswald.
Yuri Hauswald, always great to talk with you. You and I obviously have talked many times. This is a sincere question. How are you doing?
I am doing pretty well. It's great to be with you two. I've actually, been through a fair amount the last 3 or 4 months here. That's what we're here to talk about. But I'm coming out the other side of that injury. So I look forward to sharing some thoughts and tips and tricks with folks who may be navigating injuries themselves.
What was your injury?
So on January 9th, I was backcountry skiing up in the Lost Sierra outside of a town called Gray Eagle. We skinned about 2,500 feet up to the top of a peak there called Eureka Peak. And 3 turns into this pretty steep chute, my binding released and torqued my left leg in such a way that it fractured my tibial plateau and tore my meniscus. Nothing spectacular about the crash really at all. Wasn't high speed, but it happened in the worst place possible in terms of then trying to get off the mountain. When it happened, I thought maybe I had torn some ligaments in my knee. I didn't think I had broken my leg. That wasn't revealed until the next day when I was getting x-rays. So yeah, I fractured my tibial plateau.
Yeah. What's the tibia plateau? Explain that.
Yeah. So, our femur comes down and the tibia comes up from your foot, and it's our knee joint, essentially, which is what made this fracture like the worst you can get as a cyclist, because we need our knee joints to work properly. So I shattered the bone right down the middle and had a couple other smaller like fissure fractures in the bone. And there was a slight chip on the plateau, which they were worried might affect the way my knee hinges and interacts as a cyclist. Luckily, my fracture was not displaced, so it gave me the option to take a non-surgical route, which meant that I was in an immobilizer leg brace for about 12 weeks and non-weight bearing and on crutches for that period of time.
Oh, my goodness. So I want to talk a lot about that period of time as well as what came next. But first, we got to hear the story. How did you get down?
Yeah. So the story of getting down was quite harrowing, actually, and I'm not, trying to make it more glorified or not. I mean, I've been in some precarious situations in my years, and this is the closest I ever need to get to the edge where I thought I might not be getting out of this alive, because the nature of the chute was so steep and icy, and we got rid of my skis. There was 5 of us. We had walkie-talkies. We were being responsible backcountry skiers. So when we realized that I couldn't get my ski back on because of the pain in my leg, one of my buddies, Kurt, put my skis on his back. I then collapsed my poles and put my broken leg on my good leg, and was going to have to start, self-arresting, sliding down on my side, using my poles to stop me. But the chute was so steep, and it was a bit icy underneath 4 or 5 inches of snow, that I had a couple moments where I broke loose, and where you're spinning uncontrollably down this chute. That after a couple near misses like that, we realized that we had to come up with a better system to try to get me off. And so my brother-in-law, who was in the chute with us, was on his snowboard, got below me. And so we started calling it the inchworm. He would slide a foot and then lock his poles and board in. And then I would slide and use him as a bumper and hit him. He was my braking system. And we had about 1,600 feet or so to navigate to get down. And it took us nearly 4 hours to slide that distance. And it's, one of the most harrowing experiences I ever had. I'm super thankful for my brother-in-law, Duncan. He and I go way back, many, many years of racing bikes, and have had, some situations in the backcountry in years past where we've gotten folks out. So I was confident. But, we definitely had a couple of those conversations where it's I love you. If I break you loose or I break loose, we're good kind of moments. But he helped get me down. He helped keep me calm and focused on what I needed to do, which was get down this chute and down to the bottom. Luckily, we had cell service, so we were able to call some friends who skied into the bottom with a little toboggan. And when I got down to the bottom, they slumped me onto the toboggan, skinned me out to the car, and then drove home.
I'm just so glad that you were with such capable family and friends, Yuri. Man, it has been a bad couple of years, and obviously it's been a rough several months for you as you recover. But seriously, you're not just a good riding buddy, podcast host, et cetera, et cetera. You're a good friend. It would not have been. Yeah, I'm just glad that you're okay.
Thank you. I am too.
Yeah. So let's talk about. I do want to talk about the moment where you hear that you have months of being off your bike, off your feet.
Yeah.
Anyone who's ever had a serious injury, and that's all 3 of us, and have been told, hey, you're off the pedals for a while. That is a rough time. Tell us how you reacted, and then, what the plan was going forward.
Yeah, that's funny you asked that, because as I said earlier, I didn't think I had broken my leg. I, was maybe trying to kid myself, delude myself a little bit, torn ligaments, something like that. Went to Kaiser Monday morning, had x-rays done. And luckily, I have a friend on the inside in sports medicine at Kaiser who called me within 10 minutes of getting my x-rays and was like, hey, you got to come back to the hospital. You have a fractured tibial plateau. And I was like, what? And he's like, yep. And so they whisked me back up to Kaiser, went into orthopedic. They fitted me with a brace. They tried to give me a bunch of painkillers, which I declined. I'm really not into painkillers. And then they quickly got me into a CT scan to assess the damage. That's when they realized I had torn my meniscus at the root. And then 2 days later, I was in the MRI tube to get a clearer picture of what they were dealing with. And, I'm super thankful that and lucky and blessed that I do have a friend that works at Kaiser, because if I didn't, I wouldn't be where I'm at right now in my recovery journey, because I didn't have any sort of 10-day, 2-week lag time to get in to see the right people. He helped me get to see the right people immediately, which made all the difference in the world. Got my scans in front of all the top specialists within the Kaiser system, one of whom is an athlete himself. And we came up with the plan. Like I said, the fracture wasn't displaced, so it allowed us to have this option of going the non-surgical route, because I don't know about you guys, but I know plenty of folks who've had, a clavicle fixed or other hardware put in other parts of their bodies, and they eventually have to have it removed. I mean, Ted King, for example, when he broke his elbow, had hardware put in his elbow, but he had to have it removed this year because it was causing him pain. So, we decided that the non-surgical route was the way to go. But that meant I was in this like RoboCop brace that was completely extended, locked out, non-weight bearing. I had to keep my weight off of it for fear that it would displace the fracture and then I would be set back that much. But I was in shock, to be honest. Like you guys, I mean, my work and sort of image and life all revolve around the bike. And when you realize that that's being taken away from you, it's a hard pill to swallow. And I'm not going to lie, I got kind of dark and gloomy and super depressed. And some of that had to do with the fact that for the first week or so, we weren't totally sure what the plan was going to be. They were going back and forth between the different doctors trying to figure out the best way to attack this injury. And so not having a plan caused me all sorts of anxiety, my head to go all sorts of different places. But once we had this plan, like, you're going to be immobilized, you're going to be on crutches for at least 12 to 14 weeks, then I could sort of begin to wrap my brain around how I was going to try to approach this whole journey. So having a plan, right, with any kind of injury allows us to figure out the little steps that we can begin to take. I mean, we've all ridden bikes and trained and followed plans, and like having those little steps that we can do makes us feel like we're making some sort of progress. And once I had that plan and knew what I could do, that helped me out mentally for sure. And I'll outline what that looked like initially. I mean, initially, there was nothing I could do physically, obviously. I was couch bound, staring at my ceiling. But I got on like vitamin D, calcium, magnesium. I was drinking a lot of bone broth. I was trying to supplement with all the healthy foods I could that would stimulate and promote bone growth. I immediately started doing body work because not me, but I paid out of pocket to have a body worker come to my house once a week, because being on one leg meant that my whole body was going to be tilted and out of whack to that side. So I was trying to mitigate that damage by getting worked on every week. And then I started a rigorous regime of acupuncture once a week. And I swear by the healing powers of Eastern Med and acupuncture. My acupuncturist is a healer, and he's still working on me to this day. And I firmly believe that acupuncture is what helped sort of accelerate my healing. But we can get to that. I know I've thrown a lot out there all at once.
No, I don't mind the all at once, but I'm going to sort of drill back into some of that. So while you are truly laid up, I mean, you were essentially laid up for this period of time. And once you had a plan, even when you know that you're going to eventually be back on the bike, you're going to eventually be back on your feet, there are days, and I'm speaking from experience here, there are days when it just seems super long. Those of us who are used to the daily dopamine hit have a rough time when that is sort of yanked out from under us. And it's more than that. It's you talked about self-image. I would say it's more than that. It's identity, right? I'm the guy who rides a bike, and I've been that guy for more than half my life. It is rough to suddenly not be the guy who rides a bike. you go dark sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
How do you pull yourself out? How do you put yourself back in the light, so to speak?
Well, I mean, there's a number of things that I was trying to do. I mean, I just need to shout out my wife here, Vanessa Hauswald. If I didn't have my wife's support and her just uplifting spirit and just everything she did to help sort of try to keep my mental space in the light, it would have been a lot rougher. And I'm not going to lie that I had some really, really dark days. Days where I didn't move from the couch and just sat there. We don't own a TV, so I never really dove into the whole following this series or that series. And I had a hard time focusing on reading, although I did read a few books during my convalescence. One thing I did learn, stay off of social media. It's sort of part of my job, but considering how polarized our country is right now and all the things that have been going on, that was not the healthiest space for me to put myself in because it helped me pass the time. But it almost, it definitely worsened my mental outlook. So one of the things I did is I picked up the ukulele and began to teach myself how to play the ukulele. I also tried to place myself out in nature as much as possible. We have a nice backyard at our house, and we have a great front porch that gets really wonderful morning sunlight. And I know this may sound silly, but I go out there and sit with my leg elevated and iced and just sit in the sun and get some vitamin D and feel like I was outside, enjoying the beauty of nature and trying not to get, dark mentally. I also had the support of a lot of friends who would check in periodically and make porch visits and come by and talk. So, it was a variety of the friend network, my wife, the ukulele, a little bit of reading, that tried to, keep my mental spirits up. But it wasn't easy. I'm not going to lie. It was not easy. I definitely had many, many dark days. And it's hard to get out of that funk. I mean, we all know, the three of us know that movement is medicine. And when you have that medicine taken away, right, at least it affected me. It made me unhealthy, particularly in my head. And so that was my biggest struggle was the mental aspect of this whole thing.
Yeah, of course, the other thing with social media too is you've got all your friends on social media posting their rides and they're out having a good time and check me out, I'm training or I'm entered in this race, blah, blah, blah. So what was your approach, Yuri? Did you stay engaged with your racing friends as far as following other races, what they were doing, their training, or did you stay away, keep an arm's distance?
No, I definitely followed along. For those that don't know, I manage elite athletes for GU Energy Labs. So part of my job is to stay connected with my various athletes, whether it's, Marinda Carfrae or ultra runners or cyclists or whoever it is. So I like to stay connected with them. And actually, Hadi, I found that to be a good distraction for me because I love to celebrate their successes, their victories, their accomplishments. So it was a bit of a distraction for me to follow along with their journeys and stay in touch with them that way. I was really touched. Most all of them reached out to me and shared similar stories or struggles. For those folks out there in the podcasting world, if you're not familiar with Keely Henniger and Corinne Malcolm and Hillary, and I'm spacing her last name, they have a podcast called The Trail Sisters. I listened to their podcast. They had one specifically on dealing with injury and having dark days and stuff like that. So, luckily, like my work and the athletes I get to connect with helped sort of buoy my spirits a little bit more by following along what they were doing. Of course, I had major FOMO, for sure, not able to do what I love to do. But that was a bit of a distraction that took my mind off the dark places it tended to go sometimes. Sure.
So at what point does the physical therapy begin, and what does it look like?
That's funny because physical therapy actually, it took a long time for it to even be an option. I mean, I was completely locked out in that brace for 12 weeks. And then the next step was they opened it up a little bit so it allowed my knee to articulate, but that's not physical therapy per se. And that opened up a new world where I could take the brace off and actually drive myself places, being really, really careful and not be such a burden on my wife. But for those first 12 weeks, I was completely dependent upon my wife. And you guys probably know life on crutches is difficult. You're not able to carry things and help out. And so it was interesting. And physical therapy probably began, I would say, began right around sea otter time. I was able to start going to do some really light movements, leg extensions and things like that. Because the biggest worry was that I would not get the full extension or flexion back in my leg that would allow me to pedal normally. And thank goodness I'm about like a half a degree or a degree away from getting that back now. So things are returning. I will say too that for those first 12 weeks, like doing anything physical was just not in the realm of possibility for me. Mentally, physically, I mean, for the first 4 weeks, I was really beat up. I mean, getting off that mountain beat me up. Trying to slide your way down a mountain, like I was sore in so many different places. I ground down all the skin on my knuckles because I was clawing at the face of the mountain to try to self-arrest at times for fear I was going to go sliding into a cliff wall. So I was physically really, really broken and beat up from this experience.
Yeah, because a lot of times what will happen for injuries, especially when it's a lower limb, is they'll have an athlete obviously immobilize that lower limb, but go ahead and work out other parts of their body, whether it be simple curls or shoulder work or what have you. In my case, I fractured my neck one time, and I was at least able to get out and walk. I was in fact encouraged to do that, but in your case, you were just flat out nothing for at least 4 weeks.
Oh, at least. And I'm going to own that. Like I said, I lacked the motivation to do anything upper body. I had hand weights, free weights here, but I was in such a funk, like just in such a bad headspace that I was not motivated, unfortunately, to do anything like that. So my whole system atrophied big time. But if you're injured and able to do those things, every little bit helps for sure. I just was not in a space to start that early on.
Right. I saw you at Sea Otter and you were somewhat mobile, not great, but somewhat mobile. But I sensed, and this is just purely going on in the conversations, you were in a much, much better place by the time Sea Otter rolled around than you were even 4 weeks after your injury. What happened? What was the difference maker?
Well, the difference maker was, I was able to move around a little bit more in that brace, being articulated. By Sea Otter, they were green lighting light ground touch with my left foot, so it opened up a little bit more mobility for me. Sea Otter was like a homecoming for me, right? That family reunion. So that aspect of it just lifted up my spirits to be with the cycling family again. So that helped my headspace big time, being with, air quotes, our people, and having conversations with folks you haven't seen in a few years because of the pandemic and stuff like that. That really helped. I mean, I went to my first Sea Otter probably close to 25 years ago. So it felt good to like have that be sort of, my coming out again party of this injury. So yeah, it felt really good to be at Sea Otter.
Fatty, I couldn't tell you how blown away I was. I mean, I'm just walking the grounds and I see this guy go by and, has movement in one leg and not the other. And well, that's Yuri. I see the nice blonde locks coming out of the back of the hat. I was just blown away. I'm like, damn, he's here. That's just amazing. So I chased him down and said, how you doing? But it was really good to see you there, man.
Thank you. Likewise, dude, and hear about what you've been going through and realize that was a good reminder, right? For that first week, I threw a pity party for myself, which is not a place you want to be. There's no progress or growth that comes out of a pity party. And like I said earlier, once I had that plan, I was able to sort of step away from that. But by Sea Otter, I was pretty good on the crutches. You develop some upper body strength. And so I was able to be more mobile, and just, feel like I was able to lead a little bit more normal of a life again.
Turning the corner is such an important part of coming back from injury. And Yuri's really on the right path, but he has got more to lay on us. And while we are on the topic of injury, let's talk about another way you can hurt yourself, and that is by getting out of position on your mountain bike. The thing about Leadville and training is that you're going to be in your riding position for hour upon hour. And if that position's too low, your back, shoulders, wrists, your hands are eventually going to let you know. Numbness sucks.
Yeah, and a wrench back or neck is another way to be sidelined. So take a look at your position and then take a look at the NV website, specifically the mountain, handlebar, and stem sections. Now, the obvious choice would be that M5 bar and a stem with about, 6 degrees of rise, or minus 6 degrees of rise, I should say. Pretty standard XC stuff there. But Leadville is no standard XC race. So if you are prone to low back issues, neck tightness, or hand numbness, then consider a bar with more rise and a stem that is not pointing towards the ground.
For example, you could do with an M6 bar with a 25 millimeter rise. I happen to know someone who does that because that is me. There's also a 7.5, but that's pretty close to the M5. That 25 millimeters doesn't sound like a lot, but it makes a big difference to me. My hands don't go numb anymore. I love it. Envy also has zero rise stems for those of you who want them. We're all personal. We all different geometries to us. And both are in their M6 series and their newer alloy stems. Another great way to get pressure off your spine and off of your hands.
Mm-hmm. Look, if you're the head down, go fast type, then the M5 bar and that drop stem are likely what you're going to need. But for those of us out on course for 10 hours or more, you may want to consider comfort, and Envy can help you with that. For a complete look at Envy's mountain bars and stems, it's Envy, that's ENVE.com.
Okay, back to Yuri as he resets his year and gives us a big reveal about next year. So as you are starting to put yourself back together again, and I want to talk about how you put yourself back together again, there's also the future, the rest of the season, and who knows, maybe next season. You have a very active life. Like pretty much everyone who listens to this podcast, you have certain key events that matter a lot to you. Anyone listening to this podcast, Leadville's one of them for you. Unbound is one of them. You do a lot of camps and so forth, helping other people get ready for their races. All of a sudden, those are more or less gone. How do you put something back together? How do you give yourself new things that can motivate you for going forward?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Immediately in the immediate aftermath of my injury, I had to cancel some media projects that I had been working on for down in Arizona, the Patagonia, Arizona region, which was a bit of a bummer. But that was tempered by the fact that I realized, we can just reschedule for the fall or for next spring. I also feel like it's really important, and this is my age speaking, but to be more patient with ourselves, to be okay with not being who we think we need to be. And I'm in a fortunate position right now in my cycling career as a racer that my sponsors don't really care if I race a bike. They don't care about my results. I'm more of like a mentor, an ambassador, a content creator. And while it was a bummer to miss some of these events, I really didn't have any early season race goals, which was good. So that there was nothing really hitting me on that level. And then, moving forward, I realized, the most important thing is to make sure that my leg heals properly so that I can continue to have a lifelong love with the bike and outdoor experiences and stuff like that. And if I tried to rush it or, force it too much, that I was going to shoot myself in the foot and cause further damage. And, that circles back to the fact that I don't have this external sponsor pressure to perform. So I could really focus on my recovery and doing the best job that I could do to recover, knowing that these events will still be there for me. And it worked out. I'll stop there, but there's a couple events that have now been on my calendar that were part of my plan coming back, which were wonderful, like sort of, get back on your bike kind of events, the perfect sort of re-entry into riding again. But I've just tried to be, not too hard on myself about where I think I need to be physically or how I should perform.
Yeah, I saw a couple of our colleagues there in the gravel scene, at least from my viewpoint, I'm like, man, they're really rushing back in. And I kind of scratched my head over that. They're fine. It looks like they've made it through those initial events, getting back. But man, if you've got patience, if you can have patience, if you can use patience, if there's no reason to come back right away, you got to use it because you got to let your body get back. Give us a medical update, Yuri. What's your status now, and what can you do? What can't you do?
Yeah, so I'm about 21 weeks now out from that January 9th experience. My bone, my tibial plateau is pretty much fully healed. My meniscus, it remains torn, but since it is not giving me any issues, there's no pain when I walk or pedal. They're not going to go back in. That was the other big weight on my shoulders was, okay, I do this 12-week non-weight bearing, period. And then there's still the chance that they may have to go back in and do surgery, which is then just going to put me that much farther back. Luckily, I didn't have to have meniscus surgery. So I have for about the last 6 weeks, been seeing a PT once a week. Initially, I was allowed to pedal on a stationary trainer. So my mom had a recumbent stationary trainer. And being somebody who does like to push it, they told me I could ride 5 to 10 minutes. Well, I started with 15 and then the next day was 20 and I just kept bumping it. My goal was every day I'm going to go 5 minutes more unless I'm feeling pain. And I wasn't feeling any pain. So I would go turn on a podcast and pedal for an hour and that was it and crutch home. Because my mom lives just around the corner from me. And it was also great because it allowed me to see my mom on a daily basis. And let's see, I was told I could get off crutches. I think it was April 10th. On April 12th, I went on my first bike ride, a little bit against doctor's orders. I will be honest here. When my doctor told me I could get off crutches, he's like, well, we don't want you riding outside because for fear I would wreck. And I totally get it. And I wasn't trying to be a knucklehead or reckless. But obviously, there's always the chance anytime we swing a leg over the bike, right, that you could wreck. If I wrecked at that point in my recovery, I would have broken my leg again. So I actually drove my road bike out to a quiet country section of road that I've ridden thousands of times, got on my bike out there, no cars, and I pedaled like 5 miles out, 5 miles back, got in the car. I did that multiple days as I got more comfortable back on my road bike. And then I just kept extending that mileage, just slowly building that mileage back up. And then I went, I think it was April 18th or 19th. So not too long after being off of crutches, I went up to Serena Gordon's special blend women's camp. I was honored to be invited to be a coach there along with Sarah Sturm and Janelle Spilker and Sarah Max and Serena Gordon. And I was the caboose of the camp. I was like, I will bring up the rear. I'm just excited to be pedaling my bike here. Put together 4 days of riding up there, all total maybe like 150, 170-ish miles in 4 days, which felt really, really good. Had a little bit of swelling, so I'd ice every night. I would get in the Normatec legs to help with blood flow, stuff like that. Still, eating the calcium, the magnesium, the vitamin D, doing all those things. And then shortly after that, I was just down in Paso Robles for the Bovino Classico little gravel camp that a friend's putting on. And strung together about 160 miles in 4 days. And so I've just slowly been building back. My longest ride to date is about 67 miles. And that was at the Gravel Gorge Grinder back at the end of April. But I lined up, it was an interesting experience, and this will lead into how I'm approaching Unbound. I lined up in the very back, right, of the group with some friends. And I stayed away from being in any groups. I was just there to complete it. Right? Not competing, just complete. And it was a really enlightening, fun experience to do a ride, do a race from a completely different perspective. I met new people. I obviously had the deepest gratitude for being able to pedal my bike again. And it was just an awesome experience.
So is there anything, what is still within reach that was on your calendar going into the year?
Like I said, I'm lucky. I don't have pressure on me to perform anymore. So, I've done enough 200s. I've done the XL. I don't need to do that to prove anything to anybody anymore. And so, I'm not hung up on putting a number plate on right now. And I don't necessarily have a goal to race again this year. It's not as important as it once was for me.
So it's fine to let a year go, but I cannot imagine that you are expecting to never, race in earnest ever again. So how do you get from where you are now to where you are racing with intention again?
I need to start logging miles again. I mean, I have less than, 400 or 500 miles in my legs this whole year now, going into Unbound, which is the fewest miles I've had in my legs probably in close to 3 decades. We're used to, I'm used to having close to 10,000 mile years, back-to-back years. And so I'm just going to take it slowly. As we were talking about off air, right after Unbound, I'm going to do a massive hiking trip in Scotland. And I'm not going to worry about the fact that I'm going to be off my bike for 3 weeks, because that worry or that stress is not going to help me at all. And it's going to take away from me enjoying that hiking experience. I will still be getting exercise, which, as we said earlier, will give me that dopamine hit, right there. That movement will be my medicine. It's just going to be hiking, not biking. I plan to get back at it in earnest in July, like trying to, back to my daily rides or 4 to 5 days a week of riding. If all the, stars align after Leadville, after supporting you and cheering you on, I'm going to boogie up to SPT and go there to complete that course, not race it, but go there to complete it. And then possibly in the fall, I'll either do the Spirit World gravel event or this new event, the Bovine Classic that my friend is putting on down in a Tuscadero. Beyond that, I don't have any other race plans this year. I will reset for 2023 for sure. But I just need to start building those miles again, right? Having that training plan and working towards it. It's not realistic personally. And it would lead to a lot of angst, I think, if I set some unrealistic goals, race goals for myself this year. My leg's just not strong enough. My left calf has atrophied significantly. It's still a tad awkward for me to get out of the saddle. I have to be a little bit careful. So I'm just trying to be, patient with this process and know that progress is going to come. It took me 4 weeks, and you guys would appreciate this as, folks who've dealt with injuries. It took me 4 weeks of doing these little progressive rides to finally feel like my mojo was maybe coming back, right?
Yeah, to have it come back at all is a great thing. Now, you've learned a lot of things during this time, stuff you maybe didn't necessarily want to learn, but you have learned. For our listeners who are injured or might become injured someday, who have their identity tied up into racing and training and so forth, what would be the tips, the learnings that you would say, here's what you do if you're hurt and you want to work your way back?
So a couple things, like figure out a plan, and that plan's going to encompass everything from your nutrition, what you can eat, because what we eat really can impact and improve our recovery. So look at your eating patterns. How could you change or tweak something that will maybe help you in your recovery journey? Look at your sleeping patterns. The more we sleep, the better our bodies recover. So try to be good about your sleep too. Figure out what you can do physically. As Hadi said earlier, right? They usually try to encourage folks, even if you are not able to move your leg or whatever it is, do something else with your body. I highly recommend that. As soon as I felt good starting to do like push-ups and sit-ups, those were the things that I started doing again that made me feel physically good. It wasn't pedaling per se, but it was something physical that I could do that made me feel good. Find some constructive distractions, whether that is journaling. I failed to mention this. I have been writing a monthly blog this year, which was meant to originally chronicle all my racing adventures, but this injury, hijacked that. So then my blogging became about my injury journey. If you're into journaling or writing can help. That's a great place to process your thoughts. I don't know about you guys, but the bike used to be my therapist, right? The place that I would have some of my best thoughts and help me, deal with emotions or whatever it was, things at work. Read. I picked up the ukulele. Maybe it's painting. Maybe you can garden. Maybe being outside helps. Like the first week I was trapped in my living room, and that was just, self-imposed because I was so down in the dumps. But get outside. There were days where I would just go, I would crutch out to my backyard, set up a chair and sit in the sun for 15 minutes and get some vitamin D. And that was my activity for the day. That sounds crazy, but that felt like a win to me. And then that slowly starts to build. Then you're able to do more. Be patient with yourself and don't beat yourself up too much. It will come back. I promise you. I'm turning 52, in end of June. And it will come back. If you take all the steps, if you're proactive and do the things that you can do, it will come back. I promise. I dug into if folks don't know Brad Stolberg, look up the book, The Practice of Groundedness. He is, like a sports, therapist, psychologist. The guy's just super wise. And he has this book, The Practice of Groundedness. He's sort of in the same class as a Rich Roll. He actually has a great podcast with Rich Roll. And just has some really, really amazing gem thoughts out there about how we approach life, about how we assess our success and things like that. That helped temper my expectations of my return to the bike or what that would look like. And mainly, the main one, right? We often think that we have to feel good to get going, to go out and do something, but it's actually the flip of that. You need to go do something to give your body the opportunity to feel good. Which was super hard. So it was this super hard. I couldn't move. So it was like this perpetuating, just kept piling on. I couldn't move. So it meant my deep darkness and funk got worse and worse because I just wasn't even able to give myself the opportunity to move to let myself feel good. But once I could move a little bit more, I tried to find those little bits of movement that would allow those small dopamine hits to come. I tell you, the first day I was able to pedal my mom's recumbent stationary trainer bike for 10 minutes, a whole new world opened up for me. In my headspace mainly.
I got to ask you, Yuri. So now, as you're starting to feel better, have you started thinking about doing Leadville? You still haven't, man. You still haven't done Leadville.
You are not going to let up on that.
You're on the Leadville podcast. I'm not going to not ask that question.
Actually, I think this is a good time, Fatty, for me to accept the challenge.
Oh, yeah.
For 2023. Because I'm not in a healthy space right now. You know what I mean? It would be unrealistic and not wise of me to try to tackle a Leadville this year. I don't have the miles in my legs or anything like that. But I'm going to say right here on the air, we did not plan this, folks. I will do Leadville in 2023 because of our friendship, because of what I've seen this event do in my decades long of going there. I will do Leadville in 2023 because of you.
Look at that. My hairs are standing up on my arms. We're breaking news.
Yeah.
This is a big deal to me personally. Single speed?
Oh, don't push your luck, Fatty. You got him to commit.
He used to race so many 24-hour single speed events. This is not an outrageous question for this person.
No. It is not. It is not. We'll have to see. A lot of that will depend on, as you know, we have to be mashers when we're on the single speed. I just need to see how my knee rehabs. Back to the mechanics of pedaling, and you talked about my initial rides. Like, I'm doing a lot of one-legged, left-sided pedaling to try to teach my leg how to work again. Like, I've had to teach my leg how to walk again because it's atrophied. So I'm really focusing on nice, smooth pedal strokes and lifting up. As much as I would love to commit to riding my single speed, because I'm a single speeder at the core, I just need to see how my recovery goes. If I have the strength and the ability to do it, I think it'd be really fun to do it on a single speed. But I'm not going to commit to that right now.
Dude, I don't care whether you ride single speed or not. If your leg's up for it, fantastic. I just love the notion of you lining it up in 2023. That is awesome. I tell you what, I will hand you a goo.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, and that's the other thing, back to the whole recovery process and the plan, setting goals for yourself is, we're all goal oriented. Your audience is goal oriented, and having that carrot out there is really important. It's something to chase, and it's something it's in our DNA a bit. So I'm actually excited we had this conversation, because now I have a new goal, for 2023 is to get ready to do my first Leadville.
You got a goal, you got a crew. Guarantee you that Hottie and Mrs. Hottie will take good care of you. Of course, you've got the Goo crew as well.
The Goo crew.
Oh, man. And we are definitely going to need to have you back on to talk about how that is going. Yuri, always such a pleasure talking with you, man.
Yeah, fellas, it's good to see you. Like, it's been too long. I'm just so excited that we're able to gather again. Like Hottie was saying, seeing each other at the Sea Otter, that family reunion. I'm most excited to be heading out to Unbound and Leadville. I can't wait to be out there, right, with our athlete family and just seeing, right, the human achievement that happens out there. Like, at this point, like I said, who cares about the competitive side of it? I mean, but like the completion side of it, the challenge of it, the camaraderie of it. So I'm just trying to have a more sort of mature, level-headed approach to racing as I move forward from this injury. And it's definitely deepened my gratitude for being able to pedal a bike, for being able to call folks like you, friends and family, and have that network. So yeah, I'm just really, really excited to be back at it.
So great to hear. My 25th Leadville will be your first. That'll be so cool.
Oh my goodness, 25th. Oh my God. Yeah.
Assuming I finish this year. Can't ever make that assumption.
You're going to finish this year. You'll finish.
Yeah. Well, I hope so. Never take that for granted. That is the way madness lies. Yuri, thanks again for talking with us. So great talking with you.
Thank you, fellas.
Yuri is one of my favorite people in all of cycling. Seriously, in all of anything. It's hard to imagine Yuri being so down because every time I'm around him, he seems so positive. He seems so up. But, I mean, that's what happens when you're injured. It's great to hear that he is on the comeback trail. And what do you know? Next year, he's going to be on the Leadville Trail.
Awesome. Can't wait for that.
I know.
Fatty, I found a few other useful things on coming back from injury, and they come from a good source. He is David Van Beek, who is a lead physio for World Tour riders. And he says a few things about coming back. First of all, with broken bones and torn tissue, you just need time. And, Yuri told us that as well. You just got to give yourself time to heal. Those things just need their own time. You can't really encourage the healing in that sense when you have a broken bone or torn tissue. When it's time to intervene, though, it starts with mobilization and massage. That's how these Euro pros try to do it. So they start moving whatever's broken just a little bit and working a massage in just to get that blood flow restored. Then comes regaining strength. So once you can move, once you're mobilized, once the blood's going again, then you start looking at strength moves. And Bombeek says the gym is the healing place for both the injuries to the part of the body that was injured and the rest of the body that may need some help too. Now, maintaining the engine that is during your time off or your forced time off, what can you do? Well, if your injury is above the waist, then a trainer obviously will be your fitness friend. In fact, Pro Tour rider Matthew Hammond, he broke his arm 6 weeks before Paris-Roubaix. He went straight to his trainer. He actually had a positional ladder next to his trainer so he could put his casted arm on the ladder and prop it up over the front of his bike, and then he could lay down the power. Months later, a month and a half later, that is, guess what? He won the Queen of the Classics after doing 6 weeks on a trainer. If it's an injury to a leg, a lower limb, that's a little bit tougher for us cyclists. The pool is a possibility, at least to keep the cardiovascular going, but it's kind of a tough break there if it is a lower limb like Yuri had. You're kind of sidelined. You really just got to be patient. Yuri talked a lot about the mental side of things, and here is something else to consider, Fatty. Egan Bernal, great Ineos rider, won the Tour de France. He crashed into the back of a bus in January of this year. His broken bones, including 11 ribs, 1 femur, a kneecap, T5 and T6 vertebrae, C2 vertebrae, a metacarpal, and 1 broken thumb. He had a 95% chance of becoming a paraplegic after the crash. But he was back on the bike 2 months after his crash. So you never want to give up hope. As bad as it might look, as bad as it will look for Yuri, for Egon, for a lot of people in these cases, your body does recover, it does heal. And you want to try to keep your eye on the prize and keep looking forward. Every time I roll over to the feed, I find something that I want to try. And the other day, that is, was no different. Morton is a product we talked about a bunch on this show with their gels and carbo drink mixes. Now Morton is delivering something new. They have bars, and the feed is one of the first places that is to have them.
Yeah, Martin is making it clear that their bars are solid food by putting the word solid on the package. Martin is known for its hydrogel products. The bar is a very distinct departure from their gels and their drinks because the solid bar has 225 calories with 44 grams of carbs. And those carbs come from oats as well as rice, primarily.
Yep, keep it simple. There are 2 flavors. Basic, which basically tastes like oats, and that's about it. And then one called the Big C, which is for cocoa. The feed has outlined a Morton meal plan that can be used on the bike, and that is especially good for riders having a hard time keeping up with calorie intake. Per hour, they say to eat 1 Morton solid bar, do 1 Morton gel, and drink 1 Morton 160 drink, and you will easily get more than 100 grams per hour of carbs.
Yeah, I love the feed because they don't just sell you the product, they tell you how to use it. They get their hands on the best sports nutrition, and then they help athletes like us put together a plan to use it.
Claim your $80 annual credit at thefeed.com/Leadville. Register your email and verify your phone number, then spend your first feed credit of $20 right away.
All right, let's go ahead and wrap this episode, Hadi. Thanks again to Yuri Hauswald for his advice. Hadi and I are on social media. On Twitter, I'm at Fat Cyclist. On Instagram, Hadi is at Michael Houghton. Of course, we're both on Facebook, the Leadville 100 mountain bike page. And if you want to have a conversation, a little something more involved than just a like and a thumbs up, join our Slack channel. That's where you're going to be able to have in-depth conversations with us and other racers over at leadville.fm/Slack.
And if you like the show, go to wherever you listen and give us a 5-star rating and write a review. And to see all the ways you can find the show, it's leadville.fm.
A little word of mouth is also a great way to help us out. Let your racer friends know about this independent podcast. That keeps us rolling.
Mm-hmm. Even if your mouth is full of a new Morton bar, just go, Leadville podcast. Just say something like that, and people will get the idea. All right, good luck in your riding, racing, and of course, especially noted in the show, your recovery. If you are coming back from injury, keep recovering. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you at the starting line.
As Ken Clover says, make friends with pain and you'll never be alone today. A lot of this will be mind over matter. Whatever it takes to get back to that finish line, get it done.